With WordPress 6.9 now released, attention turns to the roadmap for WordPress 7.0. And I'm delighted to announce that there is not one, but two key features that are central to navigation in WordPress, and they are accepted and on the roadmap. In this video, I'd like to give you an overview of what those initiatives are and why I think they're really important for the future of WordPress. My name is Dave Smith. I'm a full-time WordPress contributor and core team member, and I'm excited to take you through what's coming to navigation in WordPress 7.0. So the two features that are on the roadmap for WordPress 7.0 are 1. Customizable navigation overlays, and 2. Simplified navigation editing. Let's start with customizable navigation overlays. This is a completely updated approach to how you define what happens on mobile devices, smaller devices, when you toggle the menu open and closed. Currently, the full screen overlay has got very limited control over what you show, and it doesn't provide a flexible experience. What we're proposing is to allow you to define a completely custom overlay using any blocks that you want, including a different navigation block displaying a different menu if you so wish. This will give you full flexibility to create a completely custom overlay, and themes will also be able to provide their own along with patterns. Now, there's clear, strong demand for this feature, and it has been for many years. And we've also got clear plugin precedent between plugins such as my own responsive navigation block plugin and also the vastly superior Ollie menu designer plugin, which you may have come across. I'm really excited about this initiative, and I can't wait to demo it to you later in this video, so stick around for that. The second initiative is simplifying navigation editing. Now, this might sound very broad, but we've narrowed it down to a few key areas, and these are all backed by user testing that we've conducted and that has shown these areas that repeatedly trip users up when they're working with navigation. So the key things we're going to be looking to address are helping users identify when their navigations are currently broken, stopping users from creating broken navigation menus in the first place, and I'm talking about things like providing clear feedback and validation mechanisms, and lastly, making sure that there is functional parity between editing in the navigation block's list view sidebar and in the canvas. And we think once we've delivered on these three things, you'll find working with navigation in WordPress 7.0 is a lot easier. I'm really excited about both these features, and as we head into the festive break and into 2026, I thought it would be useful to give you an update of where we are with these features and also show you a demo of our progress to date. So if you're ready, let's dive into that. Okay, so let's kick off with a demo of customizable navigation overlays. So where are we with this project? Well, I'm pleased to say that work has been proceeding apace in the Gutenberg GitHub repository, and we've made considerable progress since the roadmap was released. Now, we've been building off the back of this prototype, which I explored, which was basically a very low fidelity effort to see how we could do customization overlays in the editor and on the front of the site. And from this, we were able to devise quite a clear specification of work, which is covered in this issue. And I would encourage everyone who's watching this video to take a look at that to just really get a solid grasp of exactly what we're hoping to deliver as the foundational experience. Of course, there's a lot of things that we could do, but I think the key is that we don't allow that to compromise delivering the important key functionality that we all need in WordPress today. So if we scroll down, we'll see there's a list of things that are out of scope, but also a list of things that are tasks that we need to work on. And each one of these has got its own subtasks and clearly defined scope of work and that people can pick up and work with. So please feel free to take a look at those issues as well. But I think perhaps it's most useful if I give you a demo of the progress so far. So if you want to take a look at this yourself, you need to check out Gutenberg Trunk or spin up a version of Playground with the Gutenberg plugin active. And you'll need to go to Gutenberg Experiments and then turn on the Customizable Navigation Overlays experiment. And we're doing it behind an experiment to isolate this while we iterate on it rapidly, which means we don't always have to worry about how this is going to sort of propagate out into lots of sites that are running the Gutenberg plugin. We can do it safely isolated behind this experiment, meaning that we get to tweak and refine this before it's ready to go into mainstream. So the first thing that we can point out is that if we go to the navigation block, we have now implemented successfully the ability to create and edit overlays directly from the navigation block sidebar. So by default, we have this none default, and this refers to the very, very basic default overlay that we get out of the box in WordPress 6.9 today. And it's the one that's restrictive and flexible, that inflexible, and the one that I referenced earlier. So you can't customize this one, but if you want to create a new one, we have this nice little button here, and this UI is still open for exploration and change, so let's not get too fixated on that. But if we click plus, we go into the isolated template part editor. And this is a key concept about the way we're approaching this. Your overlays are represented as template parts. And what that does is it gives us the ability to edit them completely in isolation and also use any blocks we want within them. So in this experience here, obviously we have a completely blank template part, which I will admit is fairly intimidating. But don't worry, because what we thought about is having a sidebar here, which is the design sidebar, which will show you pre-built core and or theme provided overlays that you can pick from that will give you good, well-made overlays that you can just use out of the box. And of course, if you did want to make your own, you can do that. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So if we open the list view, just to give us a bit more context, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in a group block, and I'm going to leave it with the default layout like this. So I'm going to turn off the inner blocks using content width, and then I'm going to go to styles. I'm going to set a background, and I'm going to set the text color to yellow, which is probably horrid, but that's what we'll do. Obviously, it doesn't look like an overlay at the moment, but if we scroll down and we go to minimum height, we can set a VH, viewport units, and we can say 100, and that will mean it's always 100% high of your current viewport screen size. The next thing we'll do is we'll add a touch of padding here, and you can see the visualizers appearing now, and we'll add a touch of padding and starting to look a bit more like an overlay, right? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a navigation block. Currently we only have one page, so I'm going to convert the page list into navigation items, and then I'm going to start adding some new pages. And this really shows that you can do anything in this view. So let's add a new one called About. Let's add another one called Projects. And we'll go for one more, bear with me. We'll go for one more, and this one will be Contact. And typically we don't present our overlays with navigation horizontally, they tend to be vertical. So let's switch the orientation of the block to be vertical. And let's do something like bump up the text size that to extra large. And also let's do the alignment to middle. Ooh, it's starting to look a bit more like an overlay now, isn't it? I like that, that's good. We can also increase the spacing to give us a bit more spacing between each item, which is a little bit nice of a nice large hit target areas, touch points for mobile screens if you're using it on a touch device. But of course, at the moment, we can't actually close this overlay. That's a bit of a problem. But luckily, we now have our very own navigation close block. So if I type close, I get a navigation close block, and I'm going to set the color to yellow. I'm actually going to give it, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to give it a yellow background actually. So I'll change the text to black. I'll change the icon color to black, sorry. I'm going to bump up the padding a little bit more on that, so it's really, really big and obvious, just for demonstration purposes. That's a bit too much, tad too much. And obviously I think I can wrap this in a group, and I can then set the justification to right, and I will need to turn that to a row potentially, and set the justification again, and there we go. There's our icon over there on the right hand side. So it's starting to look a bit like an overlay that you'd want to use today. So now we can add a new block just to show you that you've got complete flexibility. You can add social icons, and I'm going to add WordPress. I'm going to add Blue Sky, and I'm going to add Amazon. Okay, so there we go. It's completely, you've got full flexibility to put any blocks that you want into the overlay, and it works just like any standard template part, which is very powerful. And one key thing to remember is that all your styling of your overlay is controlled by standard blocks. There is no controls on the navigation block that you need to tweak. It's just you put the blocks in the overlay, and whatever you put in the overlay, however you style it, is how it's going to render on the front of your site. So if I save that out now, and then I click back, I will go to the sidebar again, and now we can see we have our overlay selected, and we have the ability to edit that overlay again. If I click that, I'll jump back into this view again, and if I don't want to edit it anymore, I can click back like that. And of course, if I needed to create a new one, I could click here and create a new one just like that. And as I said before, these templates, these overlays are actually template parts. So if I go over into the W menu, go to patterns, and I select all template parts, you'll actually see that we have a new type of template part area called overlay, which contains just our overlays. And we only have one at the moment, but of course we could add more, and we've got the ability to do our standard controls like renaming, duplicating, deleting, and editing. And of course, we're going to inherit some default functionality from template parts, such as the ability for themes to define their own default overlay styling and a template, so that if you switched theme, you can use the one that you think is configured to look nice with their theme styling. So that's going to be a really powerful thing that we just get for free out of the box. Okay, so we've seen how it works in the editor, and that's all well and good, you might be saying, but how does this now look on the front of my site? Well, we haven't got anything in trunk that is working for this yet. However, we are working on a PR right now that is quite a long way towards having this landed, and that is 73967. And luckily enough, I have a demo of how this works. So if we switch to the front of our site here, we can see our navigation displayed exactly as per normal on a inverted commas desktop. But if we switch to a responsive mobile layout using DevTools here, and we click on our mobile menu here, then we get to see our custom overlay. And this overlay is using the blocks that we defined previously, including our own custom navigation overlay close button. And I'll prove that to you, because what we can do is we can go into our overlay template. Now, the styling has changed here, so we're going to have to bear with that. But what we can see is our navigation overlay close. And what I'm going to do is just open up this view here. I'm going to change the color of the overlay close button, which I will need to actually select the overlay close button to do so. So that would be a good idea. And I'm going to make the button purple. And then I'm going to add some links here. I'm just going to use the same link for each one of them so that they actually show up. Obviously, you would add your own links as you needed to. And I'm going to save that out again. Now I'm going to switch back to where we were on the front of my site. I'm going to reload. I'm going to pop open the mobile menu again. And there we go. We get the custom styling that we just added to the overlay to prove that is the overlay close block. And we get our social icons showing up. Now, sure, I'm no designer. This doesn't look very good. But I know that those of you out there who are designers are going to be able to come up with some amazing designs for overlays from now on. And you're not going to be limited to what's provided out of the box. One other thing that I'd like to show you is, of course, here at the moment in our overlay, we're using the exact same navigation menu as we are in the desktop version. So perhaps it would be useful to me to show you that if I go to, now let's do this in the overlay. If I go to the overlay, I edit my overlay, I go to my menu, my navigation, and I create a new one, then I've got the ability to do whatever I want here. So let's say I'm going to create another page. I'm going to call this one Home, how inventive of me. And then I'm going to add another one, which is just called Demo. Okay, so just for the purposes of demo, to show you what I'm doing. So there's some different links, and I'm going to save that one out, and I'm going to switch to the front of my site on the right tab. And let's go to first desktop. And as we see on desktop, inverted commas, larger screens, we get the original menu. If I switch to mobile and I toggle open my thing, we get a completely different menu. And this is, again, something that people have been asking for a very long time. There are many good reasons why that would not be a good idea, potentially for accessibility reasons or just for user experience reasons. But there are some times when you actually do need to show a different menu or different content in the overlay, and you've now got the ability to do that with this change. So that's where we are currently, and work is obviously underway as we speak on additional features. But what are we going to be focusing on in 2026 to really refine this experience? Well, we have a very, very clear roadmap here on all these sub-issues, and you can dive into each one of those and it will show you what was still outstanding, and it will link with all the PRs that were ongoing. But I'll just give you a quick overview of that now to save you some of the trouble. So the first thing that we're going to needing to do is when we look at this overlay control here, we have no idea what overlay looks like, do we? We don't know what the template is. The only way we can find out is we have to go into edit, and then we have to come back and we have to go here again. That's annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to be showing a visual preview of the template right here. Somehow, in the ability to just quickly preview, is this the right one? Have I selected the right one? So if I have multiple overlays, I can quickly preview which is which. And that's going to be a very important thing to work on in 2026. Alongside that, obviously, I talked about this earlier, we're going to need to be showing pre-built overlays in the sidebar, including those that come from themes. And a fellow contributor of mine, Maggie, is working on this right now, and we're going to be expecting that to land very early in 2026. But that will look a bit like the experience we currently have for headers. So if I select the header and I edit, you'll see that in the sidebar here, we have these designs that are pre-built designs for headers, and I can just switch them out quickly like this. And if I was building a new header from scratch, I could click and it would just insert all those blocks. And you can imagine a similar experience for our navigation overlays, where you just won't have to go through that long experience of creating your own, which is what I showed you earlier, which is a bit laborious and requires a fair amount of expertise and probably a little bit asking a bit much of most users. Another thing I'd like to draw your attention to is obviously this experience of clicking edit, going into the overlay, clicking back, and then you've lost some of your context. The navigation block is still selected, but what you really need to do is be able to have this cog selected, the settings tab selected, and be able to see where you were before, and ideally be still focused on the edit button. Now, we don't have good APIs for this at the moment. We don't have good APIs for focusing specific parts of the editor or toggling specific tabs on blocks open. So this may be a stretch goal, but ideally it'd be very important to retain the context of where you came from when you click edit. So clicking back takes you back to the exact same place like this. Let's take a look now at the second initiative scheduled for WordPress 7.0. That is simplified navigation editing. Now, that seems like quite a broad area to look at, but we've narrowed this down to 3 or 4 areas that we think are going to have the maximum impact. And the first one is ensuring that we have functional parity between creating links in the navigation block in the canvas and in the navigation block in the sidebar. So let's take a look at that now. And first I'm going to demonstrate to you what the experience is like in the current version of WordPress without the enhancements we've been working on. So if I go to this About link and I open it in the canvas, I can change this link. It is currently synced with the About page. That's why I can't edit the URL. But if I unsync it here, I can choose to link it to a different page entirely, or I can search for a new page, or I can click here and it will recreate the link synced to the About page. That's all well and good. However, if I go to the sidebar and I try and do the same thing, let's click on the About link. We do have this similar looking UI, but when I decouple the link, I have no means to search. So if I search for sample, which is one of the pages, you'll note that there is no dynamic search here. And that's a major limiting factor because it means I have to know off by heart the URL of the page I want to link to, which is clearly not a good experience. So we don't have the parity between the sidebar and the in-canvas editing experience. Moreover, when I have the link like this, I can't tell whether this page is currently published or draft or trashed or completely deleted permanently from the system at all. And it's very unclear about whether we know it's a page, but it's not obvious. You have to read this help text, so it could be a lot clearer. So let's take a look about how this looks different in WordPress on Gutenberg Trunk at the moment. And this is work currently underway, and kudos for this work goes entirely to my colleague Jerry Jones, who's been working on it with support from Ben Dwyer and also myself as well. And what we can see is a refined experience in the sidebar. So if I click on this contact link here, you'll see the UI is slightly different. Now the main changes are that now we can clearly see we are linking to a page. We can see the post status of that page, it's now published. And we can see it's the contact page, and it also shows us the URL. We're not using pretty permalinks here, so it's a slightly obscure URL, but that only goes to reinforce the reason why we do need this extra contextual information, because if you only had the URL, you wouldn't be able to determine which page it's linking to from the page ID. And similarly, now if I click on here, I can choose to link it to a different page. So I click to the home page, then it will update to reflect that as well. And the reason this is important is because we did a lot of user testing of the navigation block in preparation for the WordPress 7.0 scope of work. And we realized that people were becoming very confused when they didn't know why a navigation link was not appearing on the front of their site when it was showing up in the editor. Now, the reasons for this are various, but the primary one is the post status of the link. So let me show you this. If I create a link to a draft page, I'm going to call it draft page to make it clear. I'm not going to tick the publish immediately, so it'll be created as a draft. And now in our sidebar, we can clearly see with these new enhancements that this is a draft. And that means it's not going to show up on the front of our site. So when the user switches to the front of the site and they don't see the link to draft pages, because on the front of the site, we don't render links that are not published, because of that, they're going to be able to see, oh, it's a draft and I need to publish it. And that's how they're going to resolve that. So this is why this information is important. And of course, if I deleted the page, this would show as trashed. So people would know that this is a link to a now deleted or trashed page, which is a status that's like before it gets permanently deleted. And if I want this link to work, I'm going to either have to pick a new link like this, or I'm going to have to restore the page from trashed in order for it to work. So this is all, as I said, based on user testing, and it's really, really important background context as to why we've been working so hard on providing this feature in the sidebar. So what are the next steps for this experience? Well, I think the key thing that we need to do to improve this is to actually communicate explicitly whether or not the link is going to show on the front of the site or not. So instead of just relying on the fact that it's draft to communicate that it won't show up, we should explicitly state this page, this link will not show up in your menu on the front of your site. And obviously we'll need some appropriate wording for that, but we should display that here, and it should say it very, very clearly indeed. So that is work that contributors will be focusing on in 2026. The next piece of work I'd like to highlight under the Simplified Editing Initiative is the work to add guardrails, validation and error handling to navigation link blocks. Now, the reason this is important can be easily demonstrated. Here we are back in WordPress 6.9, the current release. This doesn't have the feature we're talking about. Here, I can create a broken link very, very easily. Let's link to foobar. Clearly, this is not a valid URL. But the UI does not stop me from creating that. And when I do that, the URL, the link, will be used is foobar. This will obviously fail and break on the front of your site, and it also provides a confusing experience for users. I've seen it in our user testing, people thinking they're creating pages simply by typing the name of the page, literally like that, and then pressing enter, and then thinking they're linking to a page, which isn't happening. So it's very important that we start to add validation to this UI to stop people from creating broken links. And there is a proof of concept PR out for this already, and it's building off great work that's happening at a lower level in WordPress form components to add validation. So we're using those tools and adding them to the link creation controls to stop users from being able to create those type of links. And here we are on the PR that I'm working on in Gutenberg Core at the moment. And if we create a new link this time, and this time again, we're going to try to link to foobar. And when we hit submit, we get this validation in place. Now, at the moment, we've got this dual message here. Now, I happen to know from contributors that this message, the native one provided by the browser, is going to be removed so that we just see the one that's provided in the UI, which I think in most circumstances is probably actually what we want. And this is all linked accessibly, so it can be used by users of assistive technologies as well as visually sighted users. So that's a good additional benefit. But what we're clearly communicating here is that you've tried to create a link to something that is not a valid URL, and to do so, you need to enter a valid URL. And of course, if you don't type in something that's considered valid, like even if I try to type in, let's say WordPress, and then I accidentally hit space and then typed org, I might think I can create that link, but when I hit enter, no, it says that's not a valid URL. And the reason it's not a valid URL is, of course, because I've got a space. And then when I was trying to submit a proper URL, it's more than happy to do that for me. Now, of course, there are a few edge cases. For example, this link should always be prefixed automatically, so that it is actually a valid URL like this. So there are things still to work out. But we can see how this one change alone, adding this validation layer, is going to stop a lot of broken links being created in navigation. And the work for this is in this PR here, which is number 73486. I'll link it below. And if you go here, you can see the next steps in 2026 will be to continue to integrate the upstream changes that are coming from the form components to provide a better experience, i.e. disabling the native HTML validation, and also for improving the logic around validation for URLs to make sure we catch all the potential edge cases and have them tested, well tested, so that it's always possible to create links and it's impossible to create broken links. So now we've covered some of the work that's currently in progress for the simplified navigation editing. Let's look forward to all the work still yet to be done as we move into 2026. And one of the key areas you've heard me mention already is helping users to fix menus that are already broken. And I'll illustrate this to you. So we have a navigation here, and as you can see, it's got 4 items in it. However, we flip over to the front of the site, we can see only 2 of those items are showing up. Now, as a user, again, I might be quite confused as to why that is. Why have I got 4 items in the editor and only 2 on the front of my site? Well, this has been identified as a major problem in our user testing for using navigation. So to simplify this, what we're going to do is improve how we communicate error states. So actually, if I select my navigation today, you'll see that we already have a draft and invalid indicator for these 2 links, which does kind of imply there's something not quite right with them. But the problem is that in the sidebar here, in the list view editing, these statuses are not communicated. So if we were just editing here and not on the canvas, we don't know that contact is broken and we don't know that projects are broken. So that's a major area that we need to refine to ensure that these statuses are communicated equally. We can also take a look at the visual presentation of these to ensure we're drawing enough attention to the fact that these links are not going to show up. And as we can see, this one is invalid because actually, if we can't tell from this UI, but it's actually trashed. And this one is invalid because it's draft. Now, we've already covered some improvements to the sidebar UI to cover that, but we also need to surface these states, these broken states at the top level in order that users will know to go down to the sub level to rectify the issues. Another piece of work on top of this is that you can actually link to taxonomy terms in the navigation block, but unfortunately these states for invalid items are not communicated for those. So if you were to delete a taxonomy term and have that linked in your navigation, again, it wouldn't show up, but there'd be no way to know that from your navigation block. So there's some more work to be done there to better communicate any problems with your existing navigation. So here's your chance for feedback. What do you think about the features that are slated for navigation in WordPress 7.0? And what do you think about the progress we've made so far towards these features in 2025? Are we heading in the right direction? Are there things that you'd like to see that I didn't cover in this video that are important to your workflows? Let us know down below, and I can make sure that any feedback you do leave goes directly to contributors who are working on these initiatives. Remember, the easiest way to test these is either using WordPress Playground, I'll leave a link below, or you can check out the Gutenberg WordPress plugin, and many of the features I've shown you in this video are going to be landing directly in that plugin, except from the custom navigation overlays where you're going to have to enable that Gutenberg experiment if you want to test that work out. But do give all these things a test, try them out for yourselves, and let us know how you get on in the comments below. But for now, that's all from me. If you are celebrating this holiday season, I wish you a very happy holiday, and I look forward to seeing you all again in 2026. Bye.